And I'm going to talk a little bit about the idea of looking for sympathy from other people. And how did I come up with this this subject? Well, I was talking to a friend of mine earlier this week, and he was telling me a story about a traumatic experience that he had gone through in his life. And it was something that really mattered to him. You know, I felt bad because I could relate to the fact that it was a very traumatic experience he had gone through. And it was something that was distressing him a great deal. And he was telling me that he tried to convey the news of this trauma, you know, to his girlfriend. And he did not really get the reaction that he expected. He was expecting a reaction that was very nurturing, very understanding, very sympathetic. And what he got really instead was a more dismissive type of response than he would have liked. And, you know, I thought about this, and this was something that I've experienced also in my own life a lot. And you know, it was something that I've thought about a lot. And it really comes down to this. If you're a man, and if you are suffering, don't look to your woman for sympathy to help you alleviate your suffering. Don't look to your woman to help you alleviate your suffering, because it's really not something that she is constitutionally capable of doing. Now, I know there are probably people listening to this right now saying, how can you say that, Quintus, that you're absolutely wrong. You know, my wife, my girlfriend is very sympathetic. She always nurtures me. She always is. Just hear me out. Just hear me out what I'm going to say. Okay? We live in a society right now where if you're a woman, your suffering is acknowledged by the press, by the public, by everybody. There's a whole industry, a whole cottage industry designed around catering to the imaginary sufferings of women and their pain, their angst, their anguish. But if you're a man, nobody gives a shit about your suffering. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear it. If you're a man, you're expected to suffer in silence and suck it up and move on. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it, and nobody cares. And in many ways, this is a very, very disturbing and shocking thing for most guys to really become aware of, because it's a natural and normal human impulse to want to share your pain with somebody. You know, if you're a man, if you're a human being, whether you're a man or a woman, if you've gone through something traumatic, you want to be able to talk about that with a loved one, with an intimate, with a family member, with a friend, with somebody. But if you're a man, you've got to be very careful about how you do that, because this is the thing. Deep down, a woman is going to hold that against you. If you go to your woman, if you go to your girlfriend or your wife or your lover, and you try to explain to her how you're hurting inside and how you're suffering and how something really hurt you a great deal, she may superficially extend you some sympathy. She may superficially extend you some sympathy, but my experience has been this, and this is where some of you may disagree, but my experience has been that deep down in that lizard brain, she will secretly hold that against you. She will count that in the negative column of your masculinity. And isn't that sad to really become aware of that? And it's really not, now before you scream and moan and say that it's what I'm saying is so misogynistic, let me just say that I don't think that it's a deliberate thing. I think it's just an impulse thing. I think it's just the way women are wired. I think it's the way women are wired. Women are wired to show sympathy and empathy for their children. Okay? If you're the child of a woman, you're going to get the sympathy in that respect. Women are, I think, designed to really show their nurturing, their sympathetic impulses for their kids. That's where the impulse goes. It doesn't really go to the man. It doesn't really go to the man, because in her lizard brain, at her level of genetic inheritance, whatever you want to call it, the man is really supposed to be the provider. They're looking to you as the man for the provider impulse. They're looking to you for the sympathy, for the nurturing. They don't really want to extend sympathy to you, because when they do that, that sort of upsets their serenity. That gives women a deep sense of unease. When they see their man vulnerable, laid low maybe by despair or trauma or angst or pain, that, instead of triggering a sympathetic impulse, what that does is that triggers an insecurity impulse. It triggers an insecurity impulse, because they say to themselves, oh my God, this is not good. You know, this is not good. I'm relying on you for support and for sustenance. And if you're having hard times, how the hell are you going to take care of me? So before you condemn women, though, for this impulse, realize that both men and women have their own genetic inheritances. They have their own ways of thinking that are separate. I don't blame women. I don't fault them for thinking this way or for behaving this way. But what I do fault is our culture for leading men to believe that they can go cry on their woman's shoulder and that that behavior is going to be rewarded. It will not be rewarded. Brothers, it will not be rewarded. Let me tell you, you will be punished, and you will be reminded of it just at your weakest moment. And in many ways, that kind of encapsulates the difficulty of really being a man. You've got to be in masculine mode 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week. There are no off days for masculinity. There are no days off for masculinity. You've got to be on your game 24/7. And the minute you need it the most, the minute you need nurturing the most, is when you won't get it. You won't get it maybe from the fair weather friends. You won't get it from your woman. You won't really get it from your wife. And if you do get it, it will be rationed out in miserly amounts. And worse than that, it will be held against you. It'll be filed in the back of the lizard brain to be pulled out when needed to use against you in an argument. Hey, remember that time? Remember that time you were a wuss about this or that? Remember that time you were crying about this or that? It's a harsh truth, man. It is a harsh truth, but it is something that I think most men, if they're being honest with themselves, can relate to. And when they hear me say this, they're going to say, yeah, Quintus, man, you're right. You're right. I tried, man. I tried to do that. And I got neither sympathy nor empathy. And as an aside, there is actually a difference between the words sympathy and empathy. I'm just reminded right now, there's, I think it was one of those Ocean's 11 movies, Ocean's 12 or 13, I can't remember. The one where they were in Amsterdam. And there's a scene where Brad Pitt says to one of the other characters, he says, I wouldn't count on much sympathy or empathy. All jokes aside, there is a difference between those two words. I won't get into it, but I'll just tell you, if you're interested, go look it up. But the point is, you're not going to get much in the way of sympathy from your female lover. It's just not really part of the equation. But you can get it from a trusted friend. You can get it from a trusted friend. And that's why I encourage men to reach out to close friends for those innermost secret traumas and struggles that they're dealing with. Because some things you just can't talk about with a woman. You just can't. It's not part of their experience. It's just not part of their world. They just don't get it. And you know, as I've gotten older, I can really understand, and this is why I think that the ancient Stoics said it so well when they said that in some ways, friendship is more important than love. Friendship is more important than love. Physical love serves an important purpose. It serves the purpose of procreation. It serves the purpose of to some extent, emotional support. But it doesn't solve every problem. It doesn't solve every problem. And this is the lie that the Western media teaches guys in the West from the time that they're very, very young. And this is why they feel so cruelly betrayed when they realize that a lot of these stereotypes and a lot of this propaganda is just not true. And so that's why I think the ancients said, and Cicero himself said it many times, and so did Seneca, so did Epictetus, that friendship is more lasting and more enduring than love in many ways. And when you first hear that, maybe you may dismiss that as just hyperbolic, as just exaggeration, but no, it really is, in some ways it's true. So just keep that in mind, file that away for reference, and realize the next time you are looking for sympathy, be careful who you ask, be careful who you approach, because you may not get the reaction that you expect. And that's why, if we really want to survive in this world, we have to embrace the ethic and the thinking of the ancient Stoics in many ways, because that really is the only method that I can see that provides us that inner peace. And you can learn more about these ideas in my books, Stoic Paradoxes, which you can find on Amazon, and also in my book, On Duties. And you can find links to both of those books on my site, on the home page on the right side, the right-hand side of the home page. You can find the icons and just click on those and go look more deeply into those. So that will conclude my podcast here for today. I'm Quintus Curtius. Good night.